All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I am Stan.
And I'm Lane.
As you can see here, Eric is not here, but we were able to bring in Lane to fill in. He's been a guest on our podcast a couple of times. We always enjoy having him here. But Lane, do you want to give people a quick rundown of your YouTube channel? In case they enjoy you here, they can go check out some of the videos that you have on your channel. And we'll have a link in the description as well.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is called The Laneinator. That's Laneanator. I have to think about it for a second every time I spell it. But anyway.
Link in the description.
Yeah, so I do a lot of, I generally, every time I finish a game, I'll do a quick little review video on it. I also do a lot of rambling videos like, yesterday I just made a rambling video of me driving in the truck and talking about games I'm playing. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, come check me out. In the past, I've done some pickups videos from retro stores. Those videos have been kind of on standby due to the current situation around the globe, obviously.
Sure.
So hope to get back into that soon. But yeah, come hang out.
What's your most recent video?
Yeah, so yesterday I did a vlog of me driving home from Montana. I went up there for the week to visit my family. And I talked mostly about the games I'd been playing with my brother that week, and also the games that I was planning on starting relatively soon. So kind of a quick rambling video. Prior to that, I had done a 2-hour stream of Persona 5 Royale, New Game Plus, and then I also streamed a couple hours of Ys Memories of Celset on the PS4. So
very cool.
And yeah, and before that, it was the last story. I did an unboxing of that game. I bought the
special edition,
limited edition.
Edition?
Limited edition for the Wii. I unboxed that and then also gave my thoughts on the game. So quite a bit of a variety there. So hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, awesome, great JRPG goodness. So definitely go check them out. We will have a link in the description of this video and the audio version so you guys can go check out his channel and subscribe, and that way you can keep up to date. But for our topics this week, we are going to be talking about the Tales of Arise delay beyond 2020. And basically, it's been delayed to around 2021. It's kind of confusing because we didn't really have a release date to begin with, but it's been delayed. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're also going to be addressing some of the stuff with Pokemon Sword and Shield, in general, the Pokemon franchise, mainly the DLC, the Pokemon Unite situation, and then also the fact that kids are buying the wrong DLC. So we're going to be talking all about that and just kind of talk in general about DLC with RPGs and where we see that going in the future. And then we're going to be talking about the longevity of mobile RPGs. So this was inspired by the fact that Terra Battle and Mobius Final Fantasy are going to be closing down shortly. As of right now, that should be tomorrow on June 30th. But these two mobile RPGs will be shutting down and you will not be able to play them anymore. And we're going to go through some of the other RPGs that have shut down in the past that you cannot currently play. And we're just going to talk about what this means, if there's a way we can preserve these, and basically just kind of, hey, what should the gaming industry do about these games? Are they worth keeping? That type of thing. And then we will be talking about our favorite RPG of the Super Nintendo. This was actually a question that was suggested by Lane. He actually asked for all consoles, and we're taking a bite-size piece by piece here. And today we are on the Super Nintendo. So that is a very good console to talk about. So we're very, very excited to talk about our favorite RPG on the Super Nintendo. And if we have time at the end of this podcast, we may discuss some of the games that we've been playing, and that's all dictated on time. But let's just jump into the podcast here and get things started. So, as we all just heard me say, Tales of Arise has been delayed beyond 2020. Initially, the trailer that popped off at, I think, E3 2019, at the end of it, it said coming 2020. I actually forgot that. I didn't even think we had that. But there was a coming 2020 at the end of the trailer. So naturally, PS4, this is the last year of the PS4 generation. Everyone figured, okay, sometime 2020, this game's coming out. Well, they've been unusually silent about Tales of Arise. And we've been wondering, we're an RPG podcast. I look it up every week. What's going on with Tales of Arise? Because I want to know as a fan, but also, it's news. And they have not been very vocal on anything regarding this. And recently they came out with a statement, and I'll go ahead and read it here, but this is from the producer that says, the goal for Tales of Arise is to provide a familiar but innovative gameplay experience for fans to the series while pushing the technical envelope to deliver a high level of graphical quality to impress both longtime players and those who have never played a Tales of game. Development on the title has moved steadily forward in 2020 as we overcome challenges along the way. While COVID-19 has affected some aspects of development, we've done our best to adapt to the situation and have implemented remote development capabilities for our team. However, to achieve the quality and provide the gorgeous experience we envision for our players, we will need more time to realize that vision, and therefore we decided to delay the launch timing for Tales of Arise. A new launch window update will be provided once we have more details to share, and I believe later in a tweet, it was confirmed that they're aiming for the 2021 year. Okay, so basically, we're at where we were this time last year, where they said 2020. Now they're saying 2021. And just for some context here, the average Tales game usually takes about 1 to 2 years to come out. It's pretty crazy how fast they are pumping them out. Back when it first came out, it was taking about 2 or 3 years. But once we hit about 2002, it looks like we got a Tales game almost every year, just about, until about 2009. And then we got about a 2-year gap for the Tales of Xillia series. And then it was a 3-year gap. And then we got Tales of Zestiria. And the next year we got Berseria. But now this has been basically, it will be a 4-year gap here and possibly going on 5 by the time this game comes out. So that will be the longest development time of the Tales franchise. So I just want to ask you guys first off, and we can talk about anything with this game. Well, first off, I just want to say that I'm really excited for this game. I think it looks great. But since the Tales of series average for releases has been around every 1 or 2 years for its basic history, are you guys concerned that the Tales of Arise's nearly 4+ year development time and the recent delay is a consequence of Bandai-Namco biting off more than they can chew? Or is the game at risk of entering dev hell? Or do you take his statement that they're just, the current situation, they're trying to be more detail oriented with the game? How do you guys assess the situation? Stan, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I'm actually not too concerned about the game due to the time gap between the previous game.
Okay.
I did some looking into this, and like you mentioned, back in the early 2000s, there was just a Tales game coming out all the time, right? Be it on console or like a handheld, right? Like I believe there was one on the PSP. I can't remember which one that was, but they were cranking them out, and that's because they had a dedicated studio, Namco Tales studio that just made Tales games. Like that's just all they did. They finished the Tales game and they got started on the next one, and so they were able to make them very fast. But in 2012, in February 2012, which was right after Tales of Xillia came out, the first one, Namco Bandai, or Bandai Namco, the publisher, right? They dissolved the Tales of studio, which was about 80 people, it seems, according to Wikipedia anyway, about 80 people.
When was this?
In 2012.
Okay, so that's
February of 2012, and that's when you started seeing like more of a gap between the releases.
Yeah.
And I assume it's because they have those people that were formerly just Tales of staff working on other games in between.
So that's the break between Tales of Xillia 2 and Tales of Zestiria, where we saw that 3-year gap.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so Now they did have Zestiria come out in 2015 and then Berseria and right in 2016. So I don't know.
I think
I
that
guess
was
they were just really prioritizing sales or Tales right at the kind of early in the PS4 generation, I guess.
From what I understand, Berseria, because as Zestiria and Berseria are connected, that they're able to use the same engine and some, similar environmental assets and that type of thing that helped speed up the process. So
yeah, and so you have and the previous two was Tales of Xillia and Xillia 2 as well.
Right.
Which
so just
is like in some cases just a complete asset flip. you
yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
So I'm not too concerned about the length because that seems to be like it's going to be a trend going forward now that the Tales of studio is dissolved into Bandai Namco. I'm guessing they have those people working on games like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, for example, because that's a Bandai Namco game.
Yeah.
Or other things like that. So what I'm more concerned about is since they've moved to this format, we've had Tales of Zestiria, which was not very good in my opinion.
Right.
And then you had Tales of Berseria, which I haven't played, but the reception has been much better for that one.
I played that one. I'll just say real quick, the story was much better, but the gameplay still needed some work. So
yeah, so they've had they've had a not so great Tales game and then like a better Tales game, and so this is only the third one, right? Since they've moved to this new development strategy for the Tales franchise. So it's hard to say like if Tales of Arise is going to be a return to form, I guess, for the compared to some of the more beloved Tales games like Symphonia and Abyss and Vesperia and such.
Yeah.
So,
Lane, what do you got? How do you assess the situation?
Just to kind of add on to that, I can see where the concern is because the Tales series, since I'd say Xillia, has been a little bit too experimental and not really for the better. In particular with the battle system and inventory management. So hope they address that moving forward. But I'm also kind of with Stan. I'm not concerned. I think the biggest reason for the gap is just that technical hurdle.
Right.
The game looks way better than any of the previous
Tales of Arise
games.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe it's on Unreal Engine 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that alone is probably a huge leap forward for the series, and I think while it is a little bit longer gap than normal, I really think it's just due to the ambition of the game more than anything. I wouldn't necessarily say it's in a development hell
at this point.
Right? Yeah. If we start hearing about delays in 2021, then I'm going to start thinking that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's just really probably a combination of the pandemic and just the ambition of the game being a lot larger than previous because like you said, I think pretty sure Xillia, Zestiria, and Berseria all use the same engine.
Right.
So this is a huge leap forward for them.
Yeah, and that was a source of contention with them. A lot of fans were really upset, especially with Berseria. Although I liked Berseria, people were upset because that game originally came out in Japan on a PS3, and then it came out in the States on a PS4. And people are like, dude, they're giving us a PS3 game. They're like, where's the PS4 Tales? And so they got a lot of crap for that. So Tales of Arise was their attempt to kind of modernize the franchise, right? And be more just with the times, I guess. But I'm mostly in the camp with you guys that I'm not too concerned yet. I think that it's probably a combination of the things like you guys said. But to play devil's advocate here, okay? If I wanted to be concerned.
Okay.
Let's look at this, okay? So we got a trailer around E3, I believe 2019, okay? And this was showing the game, and it said coming out 2020. Now, we had other things that were shown at E3 that year, or, last summer, that were coming out 2020, Final Fantasy VII Remake being one of them. And at E3, they had a playable demo, They had lots of trailers afterwards. They had a playable demo for the public, right? But we saw that trailer for Tales of Arise at E3, and then it's just been silence. And at that trailer that we did see, I'm not even sure we even saw gameplay, because it seemed like it showed some kind of combat, but there wasn't a user interface on it. So I have no idea how far along that game was, but given that it's so ambitious for them, maybe they're new to that, just that level of quality, I guess you could say, because it looks really good. That I suspect that it's a possibility that if we were not in the pandemic, that this game still would have been delayed. And I think the pandemic just did not help, because we have not heard anything. Even before the pandemic, we didn't hear anything about this game, really. Right. So it makes me think that it was already going to be a delay, and this just didn't help. So
I can see that.
I think he alluded to that in his comment, right? Where he said, the producer, he said, while COVID has affected some aspects of development, we've done our best to adapt to the situation and have implemented remote development. But then he says, however, to achieve the quality and provide the gorgeous experience we envision for our players, we will need more time to realize that vision. And then he goes on.
Kind of dances around it a little bit. Yeah.
He kind of says, while it is an issue, it's not the primary reason, at least from how I'm interpreting what he said.
That's interesting.
I obviously didn't hear him say it, but he did. He mentioned the pandemic, but then he said it has affected it. It has affected their team, but then he said more so it's to achieve the quality and provide the experience we envision for our players. So
that's interesting, because when I first read it, I just took it as they couldn't provide that quality because they were working remotely. But I guess you could interpret it that way too, which I think makes sense given what we just said. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The other part of this, though, too, is if they are trying to, go for that modern take, are they going to get a bunch of crap because they released a PS4 on a game on a PS5? Kind of like Berseria.
They very well might.
They don't want to receive that criticism again, perhaps, and they're maybe doing a few tweaks to make it better on the PS5. Makes sense.
It's those tweaks I'm concerned about, because that's when things get a little crazy. That's when you're like, oh, we just need another year. Oh, what's another year?
Yeah.
That Unreal Engine 5 is looking pretty tempting for them, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're like, well, how hard is it really to port it? It can't be that hard.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting, this is a little of a tangent, but a lot of developers are, they note that COVID-19 has affected their development productivity. I find that really interesting, because as someone who works in software, I'm a software developer. Our team has been nothing but more productive during this era. So it's funny to me. And I mean, I'm not a game developer, but it's interesting to me that their productivity is hindered, where in my experience, we've been doing really well through the whole thing. So there must be a lot of collaboration that occurs behind closed doors that maybe you don't really think about. But anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I got to imagine that for a game like Tales of Arise, that there's probably a lot of security features too, with you working on an aspect from home, because they want to make sure that you're not tweeting it out or sharing it on Discord or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I wonder if, maybe your desktop gets locked down from a VPN or something, or
they would, as a company, they would have to basically enforce their employees to work through a VPN in that case. So they kind of could control it
and monitor what you're doing. Yeah. I don't know.
Right.
It'll be interesting after this is all over and we can kind of learn how it actually impacted, because certain companies, it seems like it's just more of I guess it depends where the game is in the process. That's the other thing. I would have thought by January 2020, they basically would have been at the point where the game's done, right? Mm-hmm. We're kind of like Cyberpunk. We're just fixing the bugs, so I would have thought that they pretty much had the game done by now. But so I would have thought that this issue might have been more of a shipping concern, right? If they're going for a worldwide release or something like that. But they said they still want to polish it. So I don't know. But what do you guys think they're going to, given that ambition, and it's, they got crap with Berseria being a PS3 game on a PS4. Do you think that they're going to try to optimize Tales of Arise for the PS5, or do you think they're just going to focus on the PS4, release it, and hey, it's compatible with the PS5?
I think that they said in their statement, they want to bring in a new audience. I would think that existing Tales fans probably don't care. They just want the next Tales game. But if they really are trying to bring in that new audience, particularly maybe the PS5 audience, they probably do want something pretty cutting edge. Because somebody who's bought a PS5 isn't going to want to play a game that looks like it was developed for the PS4.
Yeah,
but that's just my idea there.
Well, the thing is, I know that Unreal 5 apparently that's not even going to be available till after 2021. So it's I don't think I actually was thinking maybe they saw that and they're like, ooh. But somebody pointed out on Discord that I think it was Joker pointed out it's not even available, I think, till actually 2022. So I don't know if that's to developers as big as them, but they could still spend a lot of time trying to optimize it. Stan, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I don't think they will optimize it. I'm not even sure if they will release a PS5 version. They may just release it on PS4 initially, at least, and then see how sales go. And then if they think they can make more sales on PS5, then maybe they think about like a enhanced version later, like a
right,
like a collector's edition kind of upgrade, right? Like comes with all the DLC, but it's only $40 and it's on PS5, so like the graphics are better optimized, the loading time is better. That kind of upgrade package you sometimes see, like cross-generation games.
That's interesting. So, well, I know that Sony has required any game past June that comes out in June this year. So right now, effectively, right?
Oh.
To be compatible with both. So compatible and optimized is going to be different, right? So, but so what you're talking about is them coming out maybe with like a Persona 5 Royal type thing, but with Tales of Arise.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Stan, because developers they know that when the PS5 was coming, they knew way before we did.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're just finding out about the PS5 and they're like, oh, we need to optimize Tales of Arise for the PS5 now because it's coming out this fall. They knew. So if they were getting the game optimized for the PS5, it would have been done a long time ago. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. So ultimately, I think we kind of already answered this, but just to wrap things up here with a delay, you guys feel more excited about the game? Does you feel kind of the same, or do you feel a little concerned? Like, I don't know. To me, I'm still excited. I'm not to that point where I feel that I'm concerned entirely. There's been some warning signs, but I would have to see, like Lane said, another delay or, something like that. I mean, if we don't see a trailer at some point this year, I might start getting a little concerned, because then that would have been a year and a half without a trailer.
Yeah. I believe
Right.
I believe Tokyo Game Show is having like a digital event later this summer, and so that would be like a prime opportunity for them to show more of what they've done in over a year at that point since the last update.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing on that, like at that show, like Japan's biggest gaming show, then that would be like a red flag. That would be like, whoa, what's going on, But until then, I don't know if I'm really excited, just because I haven't played Berseria yet. I really need to get on that. But yeah, but so I'm not exactly excited for the game, but I'm not indifferent either. I'd say like I'm a notch below excited, I guess. I'm interested. Yeah.
Cool.
I think the emotion I felt was relief, because the rest of this year is already pretty packed for me. So it's like, oh, I can breathe a little bit, play this game next year. Let me finish, Trails of Cold Steel 4 and Cyberpunk first.
Yeah. That's the big dude. There was a while there where I thought it seemed like Final Fantasy VII Remake was coming out in early April. Cyberpunk was coming out like 2 weeks later. And then they were hinting that Tales of Arise, at the time, there was a rumor that it was going to come out possibly that same month also. And I thought, April is jacked.
Yep.
Like,
and then everything got delayed.
Yeah, it ended up working out great because now I'm out of stuff to play, So, but yeah, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. But let's go ahead and move on here. We got Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, Lane, you said I know you played Sword and Shield, right?
Yeah, I did play through. I bought Shield and I played through it till the end. Okay. That was about it.
So I played Sword. I thought it was an okay Pokemon game. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't think it was terrible either. Is that where do you sit with that?
Yeah, I guess middle of the road. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I guess. Yeah. I'm just really old school when it comes to Pokemon. I just like Gen 1 and Gen 2, and
that's it.
Yeah, that's not where I sit.
Yeah. I played it and I thought this is okay, but I don't feel that people are going to be talking about Sword and Shield 10 years from now. Once they release another one, people are going to forget about this game. But I didn't think it was bad. But Pokemon the franchise has been in a world of, I don't want to say controversy, but just a lot of emotion lately. So on a prior episode, well, let's just address the fact that the DLC came out about 4 or 5 days ago. I bought it just because I want the full package, right? And I just haven't had a chance to play it yet. I've checked out what other people have said, and it makes me not really want to check it out until I get the next one at the end of the year. But basically, I've seen some issues with the Pokemon. They run behind you, but it doesn't keep up with you. There's been some other issues with the fact that the scaling's blocked at level 65, and I guess the people don't realize that you're a champion. Like they treat you like you're a newbie, which is a little weird. But apparently there's a lore reason. But regardless, it seems okay, but nothing too exciting. But anyways, so in a prior episode, we had talked about the DLC controversy with Pokemon Sword and Shield. And essentially that was people were upset that they had to buy Sword and Shield to get all the Pokemon for $60 a piece. And then they had to spend $30 on the DLC. And it wasn't a DLC that applied to both versions. It was the same DLC with one different Pokemon. And so if you wanted all the Pokemon, you had to buy the DLC twice. And people were concerned that, kids were going to be buying the wrong DLC. Okay. And, people kind of scoffed that off. But now that's been a big issue because either kids or parents, whatever, they bought, Timmy a Pokemon Shield and they're buying him Pokemon Sword DLC, or it's the same game. It's just one Pokemon difference. So here we are with this controversy again, and people are mad because at first Nintendo was not, their response was, we don't reimburse for DLC or for just wrong purchases. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's our policy. If you buy something incorrectly, it's your own fault. But so many people have did this that they're now saying, call our hotline and we'll talk to you. But I don't know what they're doing, but apparently they're trying to work some situation out. But in regards to this, we're going to kind of open this up to a more general DLC talk and just talk about DLC in general, because there's been a lot of emotion about the Pokemon DLC. A lot of people very upset about it. And there's been some other controversial DLC in the past. Maybe you guys can remember some that I forgot to point out, but ones that came to mind to me was Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valencia. That cost $52 when it came out, and the base game cost $40, right? So the DLC cost more than the base game. That got people really mad. And then Final Fantasy 15, the DLC was really upsetting because it literally took parts of the story out and it sold it as DLC. Like your characters left your party and then they'd come back and Noctis would be like, what happened, man? And be like, oh, I'll tell you later. Right. And then he doesn't tell you later until you pay money. So that made people really upset. And then I think the original controversy with DLC was Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where they had horse armor for $2.50. that didn't do anything. And that seems so minor these days. The fact that we got mad about horse armor, that like,
Right, yeah.
you know, the $2 and it doesn't do anything. You know, I was looking at Tales of Berseria on Steam, and there's about $35 in DLC to change your outfit. So it's like, oh no, we still have that same problem. But regardless, there's been a lot of this kind of anger towards DLC with RPGs. So, how do you guys feel about DLC? Do you think that, do you think it's Pokemon's fault that these kids bought the wrong DLC, Pokemon Company's fault? And then also, do you see DLC being a controversial component in the future of RPGs? Or do you think that developers are starting to get a hint here? Because, I mean, at least with like Horizon Zero Dawn, they had one DLC, 7 Remake, no DLC, Dragon Quest 11, no DLC, right? So it seems like there's some developers are getting the message, but where do you guys see that going? So that was a lot, but Lane, why don't we start off with you there?
All right. As far as if I think it's the Pokemon Company's fault, yes and no. I mean,
Yeah.
it's poor advertising perhaps, but at the same time, it's like it's not the tire manufacturer's fault because you ordered the wrong size, right? That's kind of how I feel about it. It's poor marketing, but I really do hope that they are, like, when people are calling that hotline, that they are, working it out and giving them the right, copy of the DLC.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still really shady to me. The fact that there's literally only one Pokemon difference.
Yeah, it's one Pokemon. It's like a legendary Pokemon. Got to catch them all, except you can't get them all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely fuel to the fire, I think. Had they done a single DLC that was compatible with both, I think, that
would have solved everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have solved all the issues.
Because if you think about it, only like the really, really hardcore Pokemon fans are going to buy both, right? I mean,
right.
But yeah, anyway, I guess they bank on that small percentage of people.
They're in a world of controversy now too, because I forgot to bring up, but they have the Pokemon Unite that was just announced. And this is just all like coming in at the same time, right? Like Pokemon Snap 2 was announced, which looks awesome. And they were on like riding high with like people liking them again. And then they were like, oh, we have an announcement that's so big that it needs its own presentation. And it's next week. It's so big that it couldn't possibly fit in with this Pokemon Snap, presentation. It couldn't be like at the end, right? Right. And then the people are like, your mind's going, you're like, oh, this is a big, big thing. Is it like a remake of Pokemon Silver or something? Nope. It's a MOBA Pokemon game. So made by Tencent, where the elemental Pokemon, they don't even use fire. There's no weaknesses, basically. It's just attacking. So that got everyone really mad, which only tied into this DLC issue. So they're definitely.
And I really wonder about these big companies and who they're hiring for their PR people, but they must not be gamers. They're just so out of touch with their audience. It blows my mind.
I think they hired the guy that used to work at Square Enix that said, hey, at the Final Fantasy 15 second anniversary stream, we should announce that all the content's been canceled. It'll be great. It's an anniversary.
Yeah. Celebration.
Yeah. So, but I'm sorry, I cut you off. I think you're about to talk about the DLC also, right? Going forward.
Oh yeah. So, the second part of that question, that was just DLC in general, right? My thoughts there.
Yeah. Where do you see it going in the future? I mean, do you think they're going to continue to do these controversial DLC things where you have $52 for DLC that costs more than the base game? Or do you think they're just going to do a more reasonable method like you saw with Horizon Zero Dawn, that type of DLC, or Xenoblade Chronicles where it came with the base game?
Right. Yeah, it does seem like more games are not doing that as much. And I wonder if it's because, a lot of times if you see a game's coming out and you see the promise of a season pass, right? It's a lot of people are like, okay, why would I buy the game and then buy DLC when next year they're going to have a Game of the Year edition that has all of it, right?
Right.
Yep.
I think people were picking up on that, and now they're probably like, okay, no, that doesn't actually work. We need to, in order to get good sales at the start, we need a full, complete game. And maybe if we are going to do DLC, we're not going to tell you right away about it. Like, I don't think we ever knew that Horizon Zero Dawn was going to get DLC, right? That was kind of later.
Later they said they made it clear they're only going to do one. But you bring up a good point with that, though. I just want to quickly add in here is, especially people are waiting for the Game of the Year edition when a lot of companies were releasing these games unfinished and would say, we'll finish it throughout the year, right? So now you're
people
like,
that's way too many times.
Yeah, why would I pay $60 for an unfinished game, $30 or $40 for a season pass? You know, when I could just wait a year or two, get the version that's actually complete with all the content in there for like $40, you know?
Right. Yep.
So, Stan, what did you think about this whole shenanigan?
Yeah, I was not aware of the source of the controversy, but I think it all boils down to the fact that there's 2 DLCs
with the Pokemon.
Like, yeah, like there's a only Shield compatible DLC and an only Sword compatible DLC. If you just had one DLC, and then if you absolutely must have an exclusive Pokemon, right? Just have the DLC that you purchased detect which version of the game you're launching from, right? Because the DLC,
seriously,
it doesn't work standalone, right? You can't just. It's not like Xenoblade 2 Torna, right? That was like an expansion that you could actually purchase separately and play without having played.
No, game. This literally adds on to the base game, so it's like you have to be in the game to play it.
Yeah, like why not just buy a single DLC and then it says, "Oh, you have Pokemon Sword, therefore you unlock this Pokemon," or you have Shield, so therefore you unlock the other Pokemon, right?
Yeah, and not only that, but like, can you not trade with somebody that has the like the exclusive Pokemon? Just get on Reddit and be like, "Hey, can somebody trade me the exclusive Pokemon? I have Sword. Can you give me the Shield Pokemon?" Do they not allow that?
I think they do. It's just like a legendary Pokemon, right? So it's kind of difficult to get.
So it is. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Right.
But that would have solved so many issues, and that kind of does make me blame the Pokemon Company / Nintendo more than I blame the consumers. Though, for the consumers, there should be some kind of how do you say responsibility to make an informed purchase, right? That is important. Like, it's the same thing if your kid bought the wrong Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something, right? Right? If they went to the Target and bought the wrong cards that like isn't compatible with their deck. But in that case, at least they still have cards, right? That like actually work, that they can actually play with. In this case, they're buying something that like it just doesn't work, right? Like they can't use it at all. So I have more sympathy for that situation of that kind of misinformed purchase, right? But it could have all been solved if they weren't so greedy as to have 2 versions of DLC with the hope that a very small percentage of their players would purchase both, right? That's kind of
it's this weird part. It's this weird thing I'm conflicted about. That on one hand, I want to just make fun of the people that bought the wrong DLC because, like, I feel like that's kind of stupid, especially since
you gotta be careful with your purchases. Like that should be a life lesson to learn, right? Like that beyond Pokemon, read fine print, like be aware of what you're buying. Now,
how many of these people just bought the Shield DLC when they had Sword because they thought like it might work and they could get the other Pokemon?
Well,
I'm just picturing like a bunch of parents giving their kids their credit card and be like, "Okay, just go buy it," and then they go buy the wrong version.
But you can buy it in game and it'll make sure you buy the right one.
Oh, okay.
But these people are buying it from the store.
Yeah.
It's
I'm thinking along the lines of Lane, like it's probably like the kids are like holding, going on the store and then like holding the Switch up to mom and dad, and saying like, it needs the credit card, and they're like, okay, fine, and just entering in and making the purchase for them. But hopefully people will learn from this, but also Pokemon Company's got to do better at the same time.
They were really
go ahead.
I was gonna say they were really criticized for Sword and Shield because while it's a fun game to play, and Pokemon's one of the most financially successful gaming franchises out there, especially if you start adding in the merchandise and stuff like that, like it's $1 billion franchise. And when you look at Sword and Shield, it's not terrible, but there's a lot of low textures. There's a lot of repeating tree graphics that people showed. They reused a lot of the Pokemon animations from the 3DS. They didn't remake the animations. So there was they took some shortcuts here. So people were already upset that, you're going to make a ton of money off this. This is going to have record sales. And on top of that, you want me to buy 2 versions. On top of that, you want me to buy 2 DLCs. And like, and so it's poorly implemented. Like you said, why didn't they just let you buy one and it detects which one you have? So, right. They got to do something, because I think they might have just, the Pokemon Company might have just gotten too big for them to handle,
Too much of an ego, you mean, by too big, right? Like...
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably more accurate, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off though. Keep going.
Oh no, I was pretty much done. Hopefully both parties will be able to walk away from this with lesson learned. Pokemon Company, like, hey, maybe don't make 2 versions of the same DLC and try and extract more money out of your audience that is buying the brand new game no matter what anyway, and then for the people who made the wrong purchases, like maybe try to be more careful next time, unless on the store it was like misleading somehow, because that could be the case too. I didn't actually go on the store and look at like how it directs you to purchase whatever DLC.
Well, you have to think there's 2 of them in the store, right?
I would think so, and I think they'd be back to back with like one labeled sword and the other shield, but I don't know.
That's true. We have to put that caveat out there. Maybe, because I bought it, and I feel like I bought it from within the game though, so I don't know.
Yeah, they probably thought that they could they had Shield, and then they could buy the sword version of the game and now have both in one game.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is great.
If that's how they advertise it.
For $30, I'll get this.
Yeah.
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 I can see a kid doing that.
Stan, did you have any thoughts on how DLC is going to go going forward? Do you think we're still going to see stuff like this as we move forward from these big companies, or do you think they're kind of figuring it out?
I'm not sure, because the other big Nintendo game right now, Animal Crossing, got an update for free that, from what I understand, added like some pretty significant content. Like it takes place on an island, and now with the update, like your character can go out and swim into the water, and there's like more beach and like ocean content added for the summertime, essentially. So they keep adding seasonal updates to that game for free. Like they don't charge anything for that. So I don't know. Like the Pokemon Company seems to have a different strategy, like more paid for DLC, like a lot of other companies do.
Right.
Do you think that kind of has to do with the fact that these are multiplayer games versus single player games, though?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, because you don't have to pay a monthly fee for Animal Crossing, right?
No, you buy the game once.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
I was gonna say, I own Animal Crossings on Switch. I figured I would try it out, and I enjoyed it for 4 days until I realized every time I pay off my freaking next house, he gives me another loan that's even bigger, and I'm like, I see what you're doing here.
Mortgage Simulator 2020.
Yeah, it's just the same thing over and over again. But I'm sorry,
and it doesn't make any sense, right? He'll give you a loan for the whole house, like the property, but then you pay that off, and then the next loan is like for an add-on, like a room, right? But it costs more than the house.
Yeah, you're like, can I go to a different lender around here? I mean,
What's the interest rate?
Seems like this is a kind of a monopolized business.
Yeah, but regarding DLC, I don't know. It's really hard to predict, like, because this generation has just gotten so scummy with the DLC practices, with the loot boxes and the in-game currencies added everywhere that allow you to get stuff, and you can pay more real money to get that in-game currency, which entices people to make in-game purchases.
Yeah.
So
I think
this is not quite as bad as that, for sure. Not as bad a practice, but it's hard to say if it's going to get worse or better from here.
I think that they've gotten better at it. I think that it's definitely gotten better to begin with. It isn't as bad as it used to be. Like I said, we saw Horizon Zero Dawn. They made it a point to say one DLC. Okay, 7 Remake, I was surprised that had no DLC. I thought for sure that thing was going to be loaded with DLC, because that would have made all, and it still might. Maybe they'll announce some in the summer.
Yeah, not yet. There hasn't been that much time passed yet. We don't know yet.
Yeah. But, well, that's true, because Tabata, like, after, 15 came out, a week later, people were complaining, and he was like, calm down, we're making DLC. You'll find out what happened to Gladio, So, but regardless, from my perspective, though, I think they're getting better at hiding it. So, Dragon Quest XI, they said, oh, we're not doing any DLC. They made it like a stance. Like, we're taking a stance against DLC. We don't believe in that crap. But then they released the version on Switch that had all new content on it, which would have been DLC, but it was only available on the Switch.
Right.
They didn't update the other versions. So instead of $20 or $15, they got me to spend $60 more on that version. Granted, they had to recoup costs for porting it. It was more of a hassle than it was. And there's a lot of content on there, so that it's not like a crapshoot at all. It's definitely worth the money. But, that's a case where they kind of slipped under the radar by calling it something a little bit different. Or with the Xenoblade Chronicles, DE, I refuse to call it what that stands for. The DLC on that game came with the base game, and the developers said that if this DLC wasn't here, the game would have been like $10 less.
So, I guess a definitive edition isn't really a definitive edition if you have DLC coming later, right?
That's true. Well, now
to your point, Hat.
It's more definitive, right? So,
right.
Which, if you're gonna have DLC, I'm okay with buying it. I just want it available. Well, if it's going to be part of the story, like it's going to impact the story at all, I want it to be available on day one, right? I don't want to beat the whole game like I did with 15, where I beat the whole game. I know how it ends, and now you're going to tell me what happened to Gladio, but I already know how the game ends. Like, it's not the same,
and I think that's also might be part of it too, because I think most gamers, when it comes to a single player game, and this is kind of why I asked if you thought maybe it's because of multiplayer game, but for me, it's like, I also don't only want to play through a game one time. If there's DLC for a single player game, like, I love the game, I generally won't even bother with it. I already played the game. I have too many other games I want to play.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about, Lane? You said you were playing Persona 5, or did you say Persona 4 Golden, or did you say Persona 5 Royal at the start of the podcast? I can't remember which one you said you played.
Well, so
you played both?
Played both those games this year. But at the beginning of the podcast, I had mentioned that I streamed like the first 2 hours of New Game Plus for Persona 5 Royal.
So on that note, then, how do you feel about Atlas's approach to that, where they have their initial version, then they come out with an improved version a year or two later? We saw it with Persona 4 and then Persona 5. Also, that's basically DLC, right? But it's just an improved version of the game.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And I probably would not. I actually did not complete the vanilla version of Persona 5. So had I beaten the vanilla version of Persona 5, I probably wouldn't have bought Royal, to be honest. But the fact that I didn't play it and then Royal came out, I played through it. Same with Golden. Like, I never played Persona 4 on the PS2. And it's also the same reason that I won't buy Persona 3, or that I won't play Persona 3 on either the FES version for PS2 or the Persona 3 Portable, is because both of those versions of the game have sort of pros and cons to them, I'd rather wait for a definitive edition of Persona 3, which hopefully comes someday.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
sure.
that. Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
It's interesting because people are generally pretty positive about those versions. I mean, this is the definitive way to play the game, right? But then they get really mad about DLC, or they got really mad about the Royal Edition of Final Fantasy 15, for example. Just like the audacity, right? But like Persona is really popular right now, so it's more acceptable. But
I think it's more acceptable just because Persona 5 is such a good game.
It's a complete game in of itself, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think people probably give Persona a pass just because it is such a good game, and it's a lot of people say it's a perfect game made better. So.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys have anything else you want to say about the Pokemon situation, or the just DLC in general, before we move into some mystery character?
I don't think
nope.
So.
All right, so let's jump into our mystery character here. Now, we had nobody that was able to guess last week who our mystery character was, and we want you to guess in the comments of this YouTube video. So, Eric, do you want to give them a hint while I said Eric? Excuse me, Stan. I was thinking, because I think it was Eric that picked the character, but Stan, do you want to give them a clue of who this character might be?
Yeah. So this character that nobody was able to guess last week is from the Arc the Lad series of games.
So this
Arc the Lad, yeah.
So if you go ahead and Google Arc the Lad, if you're not familiar with it, great series of games, but you can look up characters and probably find this character fairly quick. But if you get the character correct, you're going to be able to vote and have a lot of sway in the games that we are going to be playing in the future. And we're going to let you vote here pretty soon. So real quick, the games that we're talking about here, we're either going to replay Final Fantasy 15, the Royal Edition. So we'll go through that game again with the new content, and we'll review the game in a long format like we've done with other Final Fantasy games and other RPGs. Or we'll do Tales of Vesperia, Super Mario RPG, Final Fantasy IX, and what was the fifth game, Stan? Do you remember?
I don't have it up in front of me right now. No. It was it was 9, 15 Royal Edition, Vesperia, and what was the other one?
It's probably not a very good game. It's probably something Eric picked. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. So what we did is we all voted amongst us three. Oh, it was Ni no Kuni. That's right.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I don't know what I'm talking about. So Ni no Kuni, Tales of Vesperia, Super Mario RPG, Final Fantasy IX, or Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition. So we're going to let you vote in between all of these. Now, if you don't know who the character is, you get it wrong, you still get a point towards your score, which is how many votes. But if you get it right, it's like a bonus point. So go ahead and Google Arc the Lad and see if you can give it a shot. Leave a comment in the description. Also want to take this opportunity to let you know about our media partner, RPGFan.com. If you've never been to their website, they're currently redoing it right now, but they have been in the business since the late 90s, reviewing RPGs, RPG soundtracks. They have other podcasts, other RPG podcasts. You should definitely go check them out. They're starting to get their YouTube page going. They're doing more video reviews. I've actually been able to assist with that, and I strongly recommend you go check them out, rpgfan.com. Also, with our own channel, just want to give you kind of an idea or a heads up with some of the games that we have reviewed in the past if you're looking for other content to listen to. So we did a 3 to 4 part, if you count the non-spoiler section, 4-part Final Fantasy VII Remake discussion. We did a Crisis Core discussion, Final Fantasy VII PS1 discussion, Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 13 discussion, Xenoblade Chronicles, Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest V, Kingdom Hearts 3, Knights of the Old Republic, and Chrono Trigger. And we're hoping to add one of those 5 games to this list in the near future. Yeah. So go ahead and guess the mystery character here. But other than that, we're going to move on with our show.
Yeah, real quick.
Sure.
For RPG Fan, this week they did a review for Brigandine, which is a strategy RPG that we've talked about in the past a
Mm-hmm.
few times.
They also did an interview with the producer.
With the producer. And this week, actually tomorrow, the 30th, they're giving away free copies of the game, download codes, I assume.
Yeah.
So there's like a contest on their website. All you have to do is go in. I did it. It was easy. You go in. If you can find the link to the contest on their website, you just enter your name and email, and they're going to do a drawing tomorrow to see who wins. I don't know how many copies they have. I think it's a few, but
right.
There's a chance you could get a free version of Brigandine.
So I just want
on that.
I just want to say Brigandine, I'm definitely buying that game. I've been having my eye on it since it came out recently, and it's been getting great reviews. It's a sequel to the PlayStation 1 Brigandine, which was it had a niche audience, but this one is like really, people are saying is really, really good. It's a tactics styled RPG, but they brought in somebody that helped with the concept of Final Fantasy III. They brought in the composer from the Disgaea series, and they also brought in an artist that worked with the Xenoblade series, if I remember correctly. So a lot of really talented people who worked on this RPG, and it's getting really good reviews. I actually even saw IGN talking about it, which is surprising because, it's not a physical release game as far as I'm aware. So, it's a kind of a smaller project, but it seems like it's on its way to be a hit. So very cool. So definitely good RPG fan. Enter that. See if you can get a free copy. If not, might want to check it out.
Yeah.
So moving on to our next topic here, we're going to be talking about the longevity of mobile RPGs. Now, before you tune away, I have a confession to make. I used to not care about mobile RPGs at all. Like, if I saw a game was on mobile, I just didn't give a crap. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the one game that changed my mind was a recent game called Another Eden. And this was a game that was created by one of the people that worked on Chrono Trigger, and it's on mobile. It's free to play, but it also has Isunori Matsuda, the composer of Chrono Trigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did the music on it, and it's a pretty good game. And that got me thinking, like, okay, most mobile games are trash except this one. Well, we just saw the announcement that Terra Battle, which is the first game that was made by Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, his new company Mistwalker, they made the Terra Battle series. Terra Battle 2 years ago, they closed the servers down for that. So tomorrow on June 30th, they're closing the servers down for Terra Battle 1. And also Square Enix is closing the servers for Final Fantasy Mobius. So you will not be able to play these games anymore. And it inspired us to kind of take a look at some of the games just in general that have closed down, mobile RPGs that you currently cannot play or play very easily. So you can't buy them anymore. So I'm going to go through a quick list here, and then we'll just kind of open this up for discussion on what do we think about this? What should they do to keep these alive? Is there a way to keep it alive? That type of thing. So starting us off here, we have Before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII. That is the prequel to Crisis Core. Nomura still talks about it today, but it ran for 4 years before they stopped support of it. They turned the servers off. It was a single player game. It wasn't an online game, but you can't play it at all anywhere. You can't get it on an emulator because it needs to access that server. So this is a Final Fantasy VII game that you currently can't play. Nomura was talking about remaking it, but it's not. It just hasn't happened. Someone did remake it, an RPG Maker, but if you look at screenshots before and after, it's just not the same, right? But you can kind of experience it. I mean, it's
yeah. At least somebody went through that effort, for the people who really are interested. They can
check out the story.
Some version of the game, yeah.
Yeah. But the game's not available anywhere, which is crazy. The next one here that I want to bring up here is Star Wars Uprising, which ended in 2016. They turned the servers off. It was an action role-playing game. It lasted 2 years, and it was set between Episode 6 and Episode 7. The story in that game is considered canon. And, excuse me, they shut it down because they said the game is no longer achieving the level of success needed to maintain the game. So that game's no longer playable, and it's got canon Star Wars story in it. Now, here's one that I'm really passionate about recently, Chaos Rings. This was a series that Square Enix made. The first one came out in 2010, and it was their attempt to see if the mobile market could be a place where you could put a single player RPG and it could be a hit, right? And they put like actual effort into making a single player RPG. No, like you don't buy nothing in the game, you just buy it once, that type of thing, right? And Chaos Rings came out on the iPhone initially, and it got really good scores. Right now at Metacritic, it has a 92. So that's really high. And it got great reviews. I'm playing it right now because I downloaded it and I had to go through such a hassle to find an emulator that works with it because the operating system it was made for on the phone, it's so old now that even emulators aren't like that, because you don't emulate Android. You have to emulate the individual phone, right? So I'm playing on like a Google Pixel or something on one emulator. And then on another one, I don't know what phone I have, but I think it's like a Note 1 or something like that, where I'm able to emulate Chaos Rings. But it's getting to the point where most emulators will not even support Chaos Rings. So Chaos Rings 1 and 2 and Omega shut down officially in 2016. Square said that, it's growing technical issues. Basically, every new generation of iPhone that came out, they had to port it to that new phone and fix all the bugs. And they just got tired of it. So you can still buy 3 though. But Chaos Rings, the series, reached over 1 million paid downloads, and all the games reviewed very, very well, high 80s, low 90s. So obviously successful. Guardian Cross, which was a Pokemon styled game, but you catch divine beasts. It was made by Square Enix. 5 years, it was shut down due to growing technical concerns. Same thing, they have to port it. Terra Battle 2, made by Sakaguchi, removed 9 months after release due to a lack of success compared to the original. Infinity Blade, Infinity Blade 1 through 3, that shut down 2019, and this was made by this was to show off the Unreal Engine for iOS. I didn't even know iOS had Unreal Engine, but it was to show off that engine. And the game, the first game, made nearly $2 million in the first 4 days of launch, and it's an action RPG, right? By the end of the first year, it made $25 million. And every game received multiple expansions and spinoffs. It had 2 novels written based on the games. So very successful. They shut it down in 2019 because of updating the game for newer hardware. It became too cumbersome. Pokemon Duel 2019 shut down. Virtual Pokemon board game, not as exciting, but it made a bunch of money. Star Ocean and Amicinus, I don't know, I can't pronounce that, but it shut down in 2019. It was to celebrate Star Ocean's 20th anniversary. Ran for 1 year in North America, but it's still available in Japan only. Final Fantasy Awakening shut down in 2019. This was a Type 0 prequel, and it was actually directed by Tabata and produced by Katase, but they had a third party that was actually making the game. Released in both English and Chinese. And it never ended up coming to North America, but there was an English version that was released in Indonesia. Kind of weird. But it shut down after 3 years because Square Enix pulled the licensing agreement. But I downloaded that game to try to get it running on an emulator, and it required me to connect to a server, and Square Enix cut the server off, so I couldn't play it. Yeah, I could see the intro. That was it. Almost done here. Final Fantasy Mobius, that is shutting down in 1 day, and Square cited the game when it came out as the most successful mobile title of 2015. It reached 20 million downloads worldwide. It won several awards for best looking game in the App Store, the best game of 2015 in the iOS App Store, and announced in January that the game would be coming to a close on June 30th, back in January 2020, mostly due to the server issue, maintenance costs. And then now Terra Battle, the original game by Sakaguchi, that's shutting down on the 30th as well. And basically that game was very successful, more so than they thought. It received nearly 2 million downloads within like a certain amount of time, which was one of their goals. and it was supposed to get a console release, but Sakaguchi's moved on to other things. But Sakaguchi left a message that said, "It is with deep regret that I inform you service for Terra Battle will be terminated. I am so grateful for all the fans who played Terra Battle for nearly 6 years. This game was our first smartphone service type RPG. I personally learned a lot from the experience and am constantly reminded that there are no paths that aren't worth taking. I'm very thankful to have had such an experience. Currently, Miss Walker is hard at work developing her next title on the Apple Arcade called Fantasia. Thank you for your continued support." So clearly, we've seen wildly successful mobile games that are unable to be preserved or maintained forever. And it just gets too costly for them to continuously keep porting this to newer versions of the iPhone and maintaining the server and responding to technical problems. But a lot of these games like Mobius Final Fantasy, Terra Battle, Final Fantasy Awakening, they require that server connection. So once it's offline, it's not like you can emulate the game, right? So the game's just gone forever, as opposed to Chaos Rings. I can emulate that now, but even modern emulators are not really supporting that iOS anymore, that version. So what do you guys think about this? Do you guys have any thoughts on how we can keep these games alive, or how they should approach this? Is there a thing that you think they could do? Lane, let's start off with you, because I know that you are a software engineer. I know you don't work on mobile games, at least I don't think so, but I figure you'll at least be somewhat more informed than me. And I imagine Stan, I don't want to shoot you down, Stan, but I'm not a software engineer.
No.
So what do you think about this? Is this really, is there anything that you can think of that would, like, can you foresee why this is a problem, and you have any ideas? Or I know this is probably a burning question among the companies too, so I don't expect genius to come out, but
I have an idea how they can make it work, but it would probably something that would go against the company's interest.
Okay.
Well, I mean, for offline games, obviously, emulation is about
Right.
all you can do. I mean, as long as you have that version of the OS and some old build of the game that you somehow managed to keep a hold of, which is not really easy to do, because a lot of times games they kind of seem to force that update on you a lot of the times to make sure everybody's on the latest and greatest, right?
Right.
But as far as online games, I have an idea that would basically require a hacking god to pull off.
Okay.
But
so let's say Terra Battle, for example, that one's online. That requires an online connection. So what would a hacking god do?
Yeah, so basically how I am guessing they do it is they basically have the IP address of the server. It's basically hard coded in the game, right? Because they don't want anybody to be able to change it and point it to somewhere else, right? So basically what they would have to do is somehow somebody would have to have their own server locally or wherever. They'd have to point the game, that IP address, to their own server. The API to that server would have to be exactly like the API to the old server, right? For requesting stuff.
This is getting wild.
Yes. So yeah, they would in order to get that, you'd have to either have the source code of the game, or you'd have to reverse engineer the binary of the game, which is going to be impossible because they when they publish a game, they lock it down and obfuscate it so hard that nobody can reverse engineer the game and do like ROM hacks like you can do on older games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that they would almost have to release a build of the game that allows you to change the IP address of the server. And then as long as you knew the API to that server, you could point it to whatever you want. And then you could basically fake the anything that goes to the server, like, okay, is this player currently subscribed to the service? How many coins, if it's like a paid free to play game and you have currency or whatever, how many coins does this player have? You can fake all of that, but you'd have to point it to your own server in order to do that.
So basically, not only would somebody have to have their own server, right? Or they would have to either give the player some fake currency to spend for some of these elements, although most of them will let you play the game without currency. It just takes much longer. So
well, they don't necessarily have to give you the currency. If you're running your own server and that server is running a program that is basically just faking the actions of what the normal server would do, that connection, that interface from the server to the client, as long as it is the same, you can do whatever you want on the server. You're basically just faking the connection, if that makes sense.
Okay, so
Probably went a little overboard there.
could they have it to where like it gives me whatever I could get with currency like periodically? Like is that just getting too deep into the game? You would think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you write a program that's running on that server and you say, okay, if username equals admin, give unlimited currency or something. I mean, you could do whatever you want, right?
Right.
Yeah, but the trick is you'd have to change the IP address to point to either your local machine or some other server that somebody has built, and then the other tricky part is you'd have to know exactly what that interface from the client to the server looks like, and that's you'd have to have the source code or reverse engineer the game in order to know what that is. So
yeah, there's no way the publisher or the developer would give you that willingly.
Right, and that's why I said at the beginning, like, it wouldn't really be in their best interest.
Yeah, not just because like if somebody made a private server to keep running Terra Battle,
right?
Well, then that individual could, like you said, manipulate the code however they want and affect the experience of all the people still trying to play the game.
Right.
And Mistwalker's name is still attached to that game, right? So if all of a sudden, like the user created version of Terra Battle became like totally jank and like all unbalanced and weird, then like that's still somewhat tarnishing Mistwalker's legacy,
like
right?
Hentai rewards or something.
Yeah, and then the other reason they wouldn't do it is because if they want to come out with another free-to-play gotcha system game later, or just any free-to-play game with a microtransaction element to it, but the original Terra Battle is like still going and it's preserved, right? A bunch of people just won't switch over, right? They'll be like, why would I go on to the new game that has microtransactions, which I'm guessing is what happened to Terra Battle 2. There was a bunch of people still playing Terra Battle 1, so Terra Battle 2 came out, and they would have had to make a bunch of new purchases in order to get back to their player status or level that they had in the original game. So a bunch of people didn't make the switch, and so then it wasn't profitable, and they shut it down in 9 months.
Without finishing the story. Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, so I feel like for the developers and the publishers, these mobile games are actually treated more like events or like live service games, than they actually think of them as games. Because from what we see, like game preservation, even for a game like Chaos Rings, which I don't think had a server interaction if it came out on the original. Did you say the original iPhone it came out on?
So real quick, let me just clarify. So there's 4 Chaos Rings games. Chaos Rings 3, which is because they had a prequel to the first one also. Chaos Rings 3 is still available. You can still buy it today. But the first 3 were older games, on the earlier versions of iPhone and Android. It didn't require a server connection, but one thing they do have to do to get it to work is you have to find a hacked version that removed the requirement to be connected to the Google Play Store, because that's the other problem. The games are required to connect to Google Play, and Google Play will be like, that's not in our catalog, so no, you're not playing that. So
it's a way for them to force updates on the player.
Right. So anyways, just wanted to throw that clarification out there. Keep going.
Yeah, well, just in general, whether it be a game that has to be constantly connected to the server or not, there doesn't seem to be any kind of motivation for the companies to preserve their own games. And likely because once it runs out, they move on to the next one, right? It's kind of like if you were like a band like touring around, right? You have a concert, right? And it's just like an event, right? It's just like your tour, right? You go around the country, you make a bunch of money, right? But then if you keep touring the same areas and people like don't come to see you anymore, you don't like then like try to preserve the concert in some way. No, you just like write a new
Song.
CD, write new songs, like make a new CD, and then like tour the same places. If people are still not interested, you find a new place to tour, right? You go to Europe or whatever, or maybe different places in your country. Like that's kind of how they treat these mobile games, I think. Like they make a game for China, right? If it doesn't work in China, they just shut it down and they're like, okay, let's make a new game, try it in Japan and US, right? And then it's kind of they're events essentially. They're not.
Do
They
you
don't
think
think of them as
that's
traditional games.
do you think that's the correct attitude for all of them though? Because I mean, clearly they make a lot of money and there's a lot of a fan base behind a lot of them. I mean, I saw a lot of people like, hey, I've been playing FF Mobius for 5 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's other games too, like Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions, which is that tactic style game that's got like a story and everything. Like it's more than just, a service. So, I mean, it's just wild to me when I see some of these games made like $30 million in less than a year.
Right.
And then they're just like, nope, we're shutting it down because the cost of continually porting it to a new iPhone, it's got a slightly different version of the operating system. They have to port that to that version. Then they have to fix all the bugs, and it's just doing that. And then also maintaining the server, coming out with like new updates. They're just like, this is profitable, but it'd be more profitable if we do a new game,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, 5 years is pretty significant for Mobius and Terra Battle, almost 6 years, I think. So,
Yeah.
but those are like the exception to the rule, right? Because there's so many mobile games that just pop up and die, right? Because they came up, the people who played them, they made their money off of them, and then all of a sudden the money cut off. There was no more money to be made. They shut it down. Like there's for every Terra Battle, right? There's dozens and dozens of Terra Battle 2 situations.
Yeah,
Right? Where the game comes out, it just doesn't catch fire, it doesn't take off, and then it's gone. And those games disappear so quickly. I think the question of whether people even want to preserve them is like not even a question, right? Because it was here and then it was gone. So people didn't have time to grow attached to it,
right?
But
here's the thing, though. To add on to your point, I saw a study from, or at least they looked into it, right? I don't want to call it a study, but medium.com. They did this article where they talked about the longevity or lifespan of the average mobile game. Okay. And they said the lifespan of most mobile games before the developer stops supporting it or they shut down the server is 3 months.
Yeah, there you go.
Before it loses support. But then the average player discontinues use of most mobile games after only 3 days. So
I believe that.
That's why you have so many of these microtransactions in there, because they're trying to recoup costs as quickly as possible because they got to get that cash flow in, or else they just shut down. So, but the thing is, to go back to what Lane was bringing up with like what could somebody do, right? Well, they could have their own server and like it would take this hacking god, like he put it, to get this to run. I mean, we have a Final Fantasy VII game, and no one's been able to do that, right? From before Crisis, which is a prequel to Crisis Core. I'm pretty sure of all the mobile games, that one would have been the one if somebody could actually do that, right? Well, I know, I understand on paper it's possible, but just the complexity involved with it, you would think if one would make the cut, it would be a Final Fantasy VII game. And even that one, somebody just remade the game. They're like, this is easier,
Yeah.
So it seems to me that we're kind of stuck at the whims of the companies because, I mean, I could understand with Terra Battle that being an issue where, okay, to remake the game in an offline version, we would have to change core elements. We'd have to remove the, system, the microtransaction system, and like change it to in-game currency. That's going to cost money. We don't really have time for that. But stuff like Chaos Rings, where it's offline, they could port that, I'm pretty sure, to a Switch I don't know how difficult it would be, but it can't be that difficult, right? I mean, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that there's interest there. You made 4 games in the series, and it's very popular on Metacritic. So it seems to me like it comes down to the companies themselves. If we want any hope for some of these games to not go away forever, is the companies, they have to come out and like offer some kind of option maybe down the road of, hey, you like FF Mobius? It's got a story. Do you want to experience the story? Here you go. You can buy it for $5 on Steam. And that's not a changing operating system. That's something that requires a little bit of maintenance, but not, I'm sure it's not like, hey, every year a new version of Windows is coming out. it's,
Right.
it's something that I think is a little bit more maintainable, or, port it to Switch or something. Like, I would like to see more of these companies, at least some of these bigger games, take this, because I mean, another Eden, I'm going to play through that because that's a really good game, and that's connected to the server, so that'll go away. And Chaos Rings, that's changed my mind. I'm playing it right now, and I'm having a great time with it. So, it's kind of got me here where I'm thinking, like, man, some of these games are actually worth playing. I was playing Terra Battle just for like an hour the other day, just because I thought, you know what, I didn't really give it a chance. I might as well play it. It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
I'm
It's
glad you
pretty
brought that
fun.
up. That's a good point, because like you were saying, like, and I'm still this way. Like, I just don't play mobile games. But the fact that, I mean, this has really brought some awareness to me. Like, hey, these games don't last forever, and some of them are actually pretty good. So I really should
Yeah.
give them a chance. So
Yeah. So I don't know. I tweeted at Mistwalker to release an offline version of Terra Battle. So I'm pretty sure I got it covered, guys. We'll update you
thanks
when
for having our back.
yeah, I'll update you once they come out with the release date. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure Sakaguchi himself is like, guys, the Phoenix Edge RPG podcast said that we need an offline version, right, of Terra Battle.
It's like, get on it.
When
Stop.
can we make this happen? Yeah.
Stop Fantasian.
They're our biggest stakeholder, guys. We can't disappoint them.
Yeah, I don't know. Last time we tried to talk about Fantasian, I tried to show some from the trailer, and not only did that video get claimed, like it literally took our whole podcast down. And I had to edit out the footage and put a screenshot and then like re-upload it. And I'm like, well, that's the last time I'm talking about that.
Well, sorry for advertising your game for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, our RPG podcast. Everyone that listens to this is probably interested. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's YouTube for you.
Yeah, it is what it is. So did you guys have anything else you want to talk about with like the perversion preservation? I think I said perversion. Preservation aspect of these games, or any other aspect with this, before we move on.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we're all at the whims of the companies that own the product. Yeah.
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 So I know Eric wanted to bring up on this to just keep your expectations and emotions in check with these games. If you want to play it, you might as well just play it now. Don't wait, because FF Mobius, that's going away. So, and that game looked pretty good too on a phone. Like the cutscenes and stuff, I was really impressed. So, all right. So we're going to move on now to our favorite Super Nintendo RPG. So, Lane, why don't you just start us off, since this is your question?
Okay.
What is your favorite Super Nintendo RPG?
So it's really close between two particular games. I think you guys can probably guess what those two games are.
Wait,
but
they wouldn't happen to be Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI, would they?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had to think about this, and I still go back and forth all the time. They're both so good, but I think I have to give it to Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so I'd never owned a Super Nintendo, but I played Chrono Trigger for the first time 2 years ago. And that game just, as somebody who played that, yeah, I guess it was 2018, that game did not feel like a game from 1995 at all. I mean, that game is aged better than any game I can think of. I mean, I remember playing that game and coming from somebody, who had played a lot of games from BioWare, like Mass Effect and Dragon Age and stuff. Is just like, this game has like BioWare level, like your choices matter. And it's a game from 95, right?
Yeah, not 1905, but yeah, 1995.
Yeah, that's 1995. And that, I mean, yeah, that really blew my mind. And I mean, not only that, but I mean, just everything else about it. It's the perfect length of a game.
Right.
Like, I think it took me, 25, 30 hours to beat. The battle system is incredible. No random encounters, right? So it's just, everything about that game is so good. But yeah, Final Fantasy VI is definitely a very, very close second for me.
Yeah. Stan, where do you sit with this before I agree with Lane?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much in the same situation, but it's the opposite for me, right? So Final Fantasy VI is my 1A and Chrono Trigger is my 1B. This has become like the debate for RPGs on this console, right? Like that you see pop up everywhere, like which one's better, Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, and people, you got the Chrono Trigger side and you got the Final Fantasy VI side. And you have there's a lot of great RPGs on the console. So you have some other people saying maybe a game like Earthbound, right? Or Super Mario RPG, which are also pretty great games. But
yes,
for Final Fantasy VI in particular, what puts it over Chrono Trigger for me is I think that the story content is a little more mature, which I think I appreciate more in as I get older. There's like pretty deep stuff, and not necessarily touched upon in the greatest depth, right? Because it is a pixel based, sprite based game, like there's only so much they can convey that way, right? Versus a modern game that would have like full voice acting and stuff like that. But there's serious subject matter like suicide and but then also like you have the Empire trying to wipe out the Espers to take their harvest them essentially into magic. It's kind of like a genocide angle to the story in that respect, which is like dark stuff. Dark stuff in the game. So while I love Chrono Trigger for its like brisk pace, right? A lot of times it feels like the game is just kind of like skating by, like really moving quick, which is good. That makes you feel kind of like a almost like a movie protagonist,
like time's flying.
Yeah, like time's flying. Yeah, perfect. It's really good. Yeah, Final Fantasy VI is more of like I don't want to say like Game of Thrones because that's like the comparison people throw out all the time, but it's more of a, I don't know, epic fantasy, I guess you could say. Feel to it. Yeah, which I really like. Specifically about the characters though, I really like how it the characters in the game can like learn all the magic available if you put the time in, right? If you use the system, the Magicite system, you can teach all the characters all the magic, but that won't make them all carbon copies of one another because they have a unique skill. Like they have Locke is the thief, and Terra can morph into an Esper, and Sabin can use blitz attacks, which like use fighting game inputs, to do the special moves. Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of variety in the characters, even from the beginning all the way to the end. Because even if you go to the end, they play slightly differently. So that is like good variety of gameplay, I think.
So let me take a moment to disagree with you.
Okay.
I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm also going to say that I agree with like practically everything you said. I love Final Fantasy VI. It's a great game. It's one of my favorites. So definitely not in the camp that Final Fantasy VI is a bad game. But I do like Chrono Trigger a little bit more than Final Fantasy VI. And I was trying to like put my finger on it because like when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, Final Fantasy VI is amazing for all the reasons you brought up, all the darkness and just all the grittiness of it and just, the mature concepts that they bring up in that game. But I think that what I really like about Chrono Trigger more so is I just like the morally gray character of like, for example, Magus over Kefka. I just really don't. I know that people talk about Kefka like, oh, he's a force of nature. When I bring up that he's not very well developed, but people will say, oh, he's a force of nature. Well, even if you're a force of nature villain, like you still have to have something to you. And he's not really a villain. He's more of a victim of abuse, right? Because they experimented on him and it broke his mental capacity. He just went insane from it. So he's not really evil. And I find that like Emperor Gestal is probably more of an evil villain than Kefka because he's aware of what he's doing is evil, right? There's that moment midway towards the game where he tells Kefka, what are you, insane? I don't want to burn the world down. I want to like own it or something like that, right? That's showing he's very aware of what he's been doing. Whereas Kefka's like, no, I'm going to burn it all, right? Like he's just like, Kefka's not evil. He's just insane. So, but I think that like if you were to look at another type of villain that's very similar to Kefka with the Joker from Batman, very much inspired by that character has a philosophical belief, right? That he's testing. He says that you all are one step away from me. Like society is one step away from being completely barbaric. All we have to do is change one thing and you're going to be just like me. You're going to kill people. You're going to be greedy. You're going to do and take what's yours. And Batman's response to that is, no, you crossed the line. You chose to be evil. You are evil. Right. And I don't get that with Kefka. Whereas in Chrono Trigger, yeah, you could say, what's the calamity? I can't believe I'm having Lavos. You could say Lavos is the real villain, but you could also say Genova is the real villain if you want to go that route. To me, most of the game is Magus, right? And I like the fact that there's a redemption arc for that character if you choose, and he is morally gray. Like you really have to forgive him for some of the stuff he did. And somebody in your own party, you have Glenn or Frog, who has to choose to stay as a frog in order to forgive him, which I still don't completely wrap my head around. But it's very impactful, and it's a very gray villain that I just prefer over the just evil cackle of Kefka, So I really like that. I mean, I do think one of my favorite moments in all of gaming is Final Fantasy VI with Celeste when she realizes that, she sacrificed the planet for her own family and that guy dies, her uncle, right? So it was all for nothing, and she goes to kill herself. I mean, it's just so powerful, but I just, the way Chrono Trigger employs my choice into the narrative and it doesn't I feel okay with it. I don't feel like I need to look up what's going to happen. Like, I just feel like it makes sense how things play out. I mean, we sacrificed the main character. That's very big also. I think that was very impactful. And there's so many great emotional moments, being able to go back and save Luca's mom so she's not paralyzed. I mean, like, it's just, it's just some really touching stuff in there. And just mixed with the no random encounters, like Lane was saying, the fantastic soundtrack. Final Fantasy VI also has a great soundtrack, but I just think for me personally, I would rather replay Chrono Trigger than I would Final Fantasy VI, but I wouldn't mind replaying them both. It's basically where I'm putting it. So,
yeah,
if they ever remake Final Fantasy VI, that game is so deserving of a mature rating to really bring out all the darkness in that game, so you really, really understand what's going on. You know what I mean?
They wouldn't though. I don't think. Like I don't think they would do it. I don't think they would do it justice. And we kind of in our Final Fantasy VII discussion talked about this a little bit. There was we were speculating about, there's some parts with Barrett's story, like, and his friend dying, and her former friend, right, dying,
Yeah.
and how that kind of goes out, and how that goes like really dark, and I just couldn't see Square Enix like portraying that. I'm kind of interested to see what they're going to do in part 2 of the remake with that character and how he's portrayed, dying specifically, because I just don't see them. Their company has kind of shifted mindset to like their Final Fantasy games kind of have to have like a mass appeal, and so we've
Right.
seen that they kind of don't really address, like, they don't go too far into like the dark stuff anymore. So we'll see. Yeah, it almost makes me. I kind of don't even want a remake of Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI, honestly.
Yeah, because they
Yeah.
well,
I feel like they're good at
Yeah.
they are, and if you have to remake them, but then you can't preserve certain things, then it's almost like, well, what's the?
Yeah, they're untouchable at that point.
well, the thing is, I don't even like okay, so with the PlayStation version of Chrono Trigger, and they did this with Final Fantasy VI too, but not to the same extent. They added in like cutscenes, right? And
Mhm.
they're well made. It's just I really don't. I played it once with those, and then every time I played it since then, I don't like those cutscenes because it's on the DS version as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, I didn't even like them adding that because I just felt like some of those scenes were much more powerful with the sprite work as
In-game,
opposed
yeah.
to like some animation. And I I don't know. So I would have a really hard time with either one of those remakes. But
Yeah, I like the animated intro better than the
yeah, that's
the
true.
intro in the SNES version. Yeah, but then yes, a lot of those um, animated scenes are weird too, because they'll cut to the animation, right?
Hmm.
And they'll show you like the scene of like say for example Frog cutting the mountain in half to get access to Magus's castle.
Right.
They'll show you the impressive cutscene, and then they'll just do it exactly the same again. Like they'll show you the SNES version, right, of the like the SNES version scene in the
Can I
original
just
graphics, so you
Yeah,
see it twice.
it's a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
can I just say that I am very, very impressed with both of your guys' memory on the game,
Oh yeah.
how you guys remember such very, like, I don't know if you guys have played each of these games like 5 times each, but like even when you guys are talking about like Final Fantasy VII and stuff, I'm just so impressed at how well you guys remember such really like small details about the game that I'm just like, oh yeah, that did happen. It's just like, yeah, blows my mind.
Yeah, it's only for certain games, that I really
Right.
like. Yeah, it's not for everything for sure.
No,
Like
that's for sure. Yeah.
for example, Final Fantasy VIII is not a one that really landed with me. So there's actually
Yeah.
very, very little I remember from Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah. I'm the same way. There's certain games that I don't like. I say I played, but then I'm like, if I played this again, it would basically be like the first time. It was that way with Grandia. Like I played that when I was a kid. I played it this time on Switch. I had no idea. Like like I remember like one scene, So
Yeah.
it's just that way. But on the
Sure.
on the mature um aspect of those of Final Fantasy VI, I have a theory. Okay, that back then, I don't think the ESRB or whatever comparative board that they had back in the day, I don't think that they played the whole game before they rated the games.
That's very
I, I
possible. Yeah.
I think they played like 6 hours, and I think Square knew this because they don't put a lot of that mature content in the first 6 hours, right?
Yep.
I guess you get some of that with 7, but even then, that you have to wait if you're first time playing till you get to wall market. It's quite a ways, and a lot of that stuff with 6 is kind of buried in the middle of the game or second half, and so I wonder if that's how they got some of these teen ratings, because that stuff would not fly these days.
Yeah, that could be.
Right.
That could be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys got anything else you wanna add about our favorite SNES games in any second in line or?
My second is Chrono Trigger. I'm guessing your guys' second is FF6, right?
Yep.
I really like Dragon Quest V. That was a really good game, also. And but I think like Super Nintendo, it's just we all know the greats. You know, it's going to be hard to beat those. So
yeah, there's so many good games on the console. There's probably 6 or 7 games you could pick as like your favorite, and people wouldn't bat an eye. You know, they'd be like, yeah, I could see that.
yeah,
Right.
know?
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think we were going to talk about, if we had time, what we've been playing, but we're at 1 hour and 40 minutes, so I think we better
Oof.
push that to another time. But Lane, we really appreciate you coming on here and complimenting our memories and boosting our ego here. We always appreciate that. But no, I'm just kidding here. Eric wasn't able to make it.
Coming back, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, you just got to keep saying nice stuff about us. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. Eric wasn't able to make it today. It was kind of last minute, and we're like, you know what? Why don't we get Lane on here? He might actually know a little bit of what he's talking about, especially with
I'm really good at pretending, if anything.
a lot better than me. I start making up words that don't exist, and like it's so always good to have you on. So we do have
always fun. Thanks.
Yeah, we will have a link to your YouTube page in our description. So make sure you go check out his channel. He's been doing a lot of just similar type of stuff that we do here. So if you do enjoy our channel, I'm sure that you will enjoy his channel as well. But we'll have to leave it there until next week. All right. I was going to say next week we'll be covering Final Fantasy IX and the anniversary of the game. It'll be the 20th anniversary. So we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy IX and why it's a great game. And we're going to have a pretty big guest on next week as well. So look forward to that. All right. We'll talk to you all later. Take it easy, guys.
See you next time.
See ya.